Thank you for joining us. This is a very informal group exploring practical spirituality based on the Bible and the principles of Christian Science. Joel has prepared some short readings to share, and then we'll have lots of time for discussion, questions, and inspiration. We are recording this meeting to be able to share it with those who aren't able to make it or are in different time zones around the world. We encourage you to keep your camera on during the meeting so there's a better sense of trust and community with each other. So if you don't mind keeping your camera on, that'd be great. We understand though if it's not feasible right now. And this is a safe space. There's no question is wrong or dumb or anything. So please ask and share whatever feels comfortable to you. So Joel, we'll start with some readings, and we're so glad you're here.
Thanks, Bonnie. Well, welcome. The goal of these informal discussions is just to have an open dialogue for continued spiritual growth. We may not always have the opportunity to come together in a format that makes it easy to ask questions and share ideas about our spiritual journey, which is unique for each one of us. These weekly discussions are here to serve that purpose, to provide a space, as Bonnie mentioned, where we can ask deeper questions, find helpful metaphysical ideas, and just find community to support each other with love and respect along this journey. The topic of our discussion for today is a faith that heals. So we'll get to examine some pretty radical ideas and see if there's perhaps a practical way to apply them to our own lives. I'll start out our discussion with some short readings, followed by a question, and we'll each have an opportunity to share different answers. Again, we encourage you, those that are either joining us, to leave your cameras on, as it creates more tangible sense of being present together. And I'll start by reading from the Bible, from Matthew. It says, "And behold, a woman which was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years came behind him and touched the hem of his garment. For she said within herself, if I may but touch his garment, I shall be whole. But Jesus turned him about, and when he saw her, he said, Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith hath made thee whole. And the woman was made whole from that hour. And when Jesus departed thence, 2 blind men followed him, crying and saying, Thou Son of David, have mercy on us. And when he was come into the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus saith unto them, Believe ye that I am able to do this? They said unto him, Yea, Lord. Then touched he their eyes. Sorry, just admitting someone to the meeting. Then touched he their eyes, saying, According to your faith be it unto you. And their eyes were opened, and Jesus straitly charged them, saying, See that no man know it. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone, but the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And also read from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. The prayer that reforms the sinner and heals the sick is an absolute faith that all things are possible to God, a spiritual understanding of Him, an unselfed love. The prayer of faith shall save the sick, says the Scripture. What is this healing prayer? A mere request that God will heal the sick has no power to gain more of the divine presence than is always at hand. The beneficial effect of such prayer for the sick is on the human mind, making it act more powerfully on the body through a blind faith in God. This, however, is one belief casting out another, a belief in the unknown casting out a belief in sickness. It is neither science nor truth which acts through blind belief, nor is it the human understanding of the divine healing principle as manifested in Jesus, whose humble prayers were deep and conscientious of man's likeness to God and of man's unity with truth and love. If we are sensibly with the body and regard omnipotence as a corporeal, material person whose ear we would like to gain, we are not absent from the body and present with the Lord in the demonstration of spirit. We cannot serve two masters. To be present with the Lord is to have not mere emotional ecstasy or faith, but the actual demonstration and understanding of life as revealed in Christian Science. To be with the Lord is to be in obedience to the law of God, to be absolutely governed by divine love, by spirit, not by matter. Become conscious for a single moment that life and intelligence are purely spiritual, neither in nor of matter, and the body will then utter no complaints. If suffering from a belief in sickness, you will find yourself suddenly well. Sorrow is turned into joy when the body is controlled by spiritual life, truth, and love. Hence the hope of the promise Jesus bestows, "He that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he do also, because I go unto my Father." Because the ego is absent from the body and present with truth and love. So here's a question we can examine together, and feel free to share whatever comes to mind. Again, there's no judgment here and no wrong answers. We're here to, with love and respect for each other, and to learn and grow. So the first question I'd like to ask is, what is faith?
I would say it's the evidence of things not seen.
That's a great definition.
I would say it's knowing God, not hoping or just blind trust, but an absolute understanding that God is life and love and omnipotent, divine wholeness and goodness and everything. But it's a knowing, not a hoping.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the word that came to my mind when I was thinking about faith is confidence. And confidence that God is good and that harmony is the natural order of things. And even if we don't feel like we have the full understanding, I'm speaking for myself here, a confidence that I will have the understanding I need, the tools I need, the resources I need to confront, to deal with whatever problem is in front of me. So even if I don't feel like I have full knowledge, I have that confidence. At least that's what I strive for.
I guess another way we could ask a question is faith a hope that something will get better?
I think hope is good to have. I think hope is very important. She says, being hopeful is still better than being just afraid, but understanding is the important part. So, I mean, I read the Monitor and it gives me hope that there's progress in the world. But my trust in God is my rock, my faith, my understanding. So hope is like a good thing. It's certainly great, but it kind of leaves room for a possibility that there's, some other option. I hope this works out. I hope I get somewhere on time. That means I might not. But so I think, again, faith is, like Scott said, confidence and understanding, knowing, and hope is just, maybe it feels like a human thing, whereas faith is more divine. God doesn't hope that we're okay or safe or loved. He knows. So.
Let's pick it up with a few more quick readings. I wanted to share again from Matthew. And it says, Jesus went from there to the cities of Tyre and Sidon. And a woman came from the land of Canaan, and she cried out and said, "Take pity on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter has a demon and is much troubled." But Jesus did not speak a word to her. His followers kept asking, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps calling us." He said, "I was sent only to the Jewish people who are lost." And she came and got down before Jesus and worshipped him. She said, "Lord, help me." But he said, It is not right to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the pieces that fall from the table of their owners." Jesus said unto her, "Woman, you have much faith. You will have what you asked for." Her daughter was healed at that very time. They had come down from the mountain. As they headed towards town, they came to a crowd. And as they approached the crowd, a man rushed up to Jesus and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, have mercy on my son. He has seizures. Sometimes when they come on, my son falls into the fire or into a pond. We're very concerned for him. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him." Jesus replied, "This generation is no better than the generation who wandered in the desert, who lost faith and bowed down to golden idols as soon as Moses disappeared upon Mount Sinai. How long will I have to shepherd these unbelieving sheep? Bring the boy to me." The man did, and Jesus castigated the demon who had taken up residence in the boy. And the demon fled the boy's body at the sound of Jesus' voice. And the boy was healed from that moment on. Later, when they were away from the crowds, the disciples asked Jesus why they hadn't been able to drive out the demon themselves. Jesus replied, "Because you have so little faith. I tell you this, if you had even a faint spark of faith, even faith as tiny as a mustard seed, You could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and because of your faith, the mountain would move. If you had just a sliver of faith, you would find nothing impossible. And from Mark, Jesus said, embrace this God life. Really embrace it, and nothing will be too much for you. This mountain, for instance, just say, go jump in the lake. No shuffling or hemming and hawing, and it's as good as done. That's why I urge you to pray for absolutely everything, ranging from small to large. Include everything as you embrace this God life, and you'll get God's everything. And again from Mary Baker Eddy. Faith, if it be mere belief, is as a pendulum swinging between nothing and something, having no fixity. Faith, advanced to spiritual understanding, is the evidence gained from spirit, which rebukes sin of every kind and establishes the claims of God. In Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and English, faith, and the words corresponding thereto, have these two definitions: trustfulness and trustworthiness. One kind of faith trusts one's welfare to others. Another kind of faith understands divine love and how to work out one's own salvation with fear and trembling. Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief, expresses the helplessness of a blind faith, whereas the injunction, believe, and thou shalt be saved, demands self-reliant trustworthiness, which includes spiritual understanding and confides all to God. Truth and love come nearer in the hour of woe, when strong faith or spiritual strength wrestles and prevails through the understanding of God. Every trial of our faith in God makes us stronger. The more difficult seems the material condition to be overcome by spirit, the stronger should be our faith, and the purer our love. So let's examine another question. What could be the difference between faith and understanding?
I don't know that question yet, that answer. If I could go back to the last one, your question about what is faith, and just listening to everybody's comments and then thinking a little deeper, I think that faith takes some qualities, some other qualities to get there. And one of them that comes to mind for me is perseverance. When I'm working through a healing, to persevere, regardless of what the material senses tell me, regardless of what I see or what I hear, as well as patience is another quality. And I have to say that evidence plays a role in faith, because I wouldn't have faith in Christian Science if I haven't seen evidence of healing. I wouldn't feel so passionate about it. So those qualities come to mind when I think of the word faith. I'll think further on your question about faith and understanding. Thank you.
Sure. And I think that's a great thing to point out. And that's something I'm going to circle back to later. But we have faith because we see the evidence of it. Like you said, if there was no evidence of it, you wouldn't know what you have faith in, or what you're hoping for, or what you're working to understand. But yeah, that's the healing for me reinforces our belief in, because that's the science part of Christian Science. It's a repeatable, demonstratable thing. So that, yeah, for me, it reinforces it as well. It's a great point.
Thanks.
I think it must be, I agree with what you've said, but when Thomas was doubting, Jesus gave him proof after the resurrection. And he said to Thomas, you have faith because you've seen the proof. But blessed are they who have faith, even though they haven't seen the proof. Words to that effect. So there must be another element to faith. I like what Scott said earlier about confidence. That was just what I was going to say. I think small children have faith because it's innate. And it's only their experience on the human level which might try to take away that faith if it's not strengthened. I agree that we do need proofs of our faith, and in my experience, I know I had faith when I was in Sunday school, when I was small, and I had a period of doubting when I was about 16 or so, which is pretty common. And then I think that's when my siblings also began doubting, maybe a little bit earlier. But there must have been something in my thought which enabled me to continue, because when I was at university, I joined the Christian Science College organization, and all of a sudden I was among people of my own age who were proving Christian Science on a daily basis. And that was really my epiphany when I started proving Christian Science for myself. And I mean, I had one healing after another. And those healings, of course, strengthened my faith and my confidence that I could rely on God. So I'm wondering what that other element was that enabled me to continue in my understanding and practice of Christian Science, which my siblings never seem to have experienced, because they let the doubts take over. And they left Christian Science. And I don't know if anybody can suggest an answer to that.
Well, I think that to answer Joel's question about the relationship between faith and understanding is a macro or a helicopter view of divine science itself, and just the scientific approach to the wonder of life, which is this week's lesson, and being in awe of all of the demonstrations and proofs, if you will, the proving of the truth in these demonstrations from the building of that faith, moves into the idea, the divine idea, that the science of Christ is the understanding of what that faith and that relationship between scientific proof of his obvious ability to demonstrate the evidence of the truth of life and love, facilitates the understanding of the science and the awe of spiritual life, which is again is this in this week's lesson. That's all I have to say.
Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but in always submit, and God will make your path straight. So in some ways where there is a confidence and an assurance in our faith, but also in Hebrews 11:6, it says that without faith, we cannot please God. And so sometimes I feel like faith is spelled risk, because we're taking a risk at some point, right? And the other side of that, just in thinking a little bit more, is we can put our faith in a lot of things. Atheists have faith. And so what are we putting that faith in? And I see through Hebrews 11:6 that when our faith is rooted in our belief, then that's when it begins to take root and manifest. Whether that root of belief is in God or in something else, it will take root and it will produce fruit accordingly, good or bad. Just a thought.
Yeah, and you mentioned, what do we have faith in? One other question I had was, what is it that does the healing? Because, sometimes I would fall into the trap when I would have a physical challenge of like, oh, I don't have enough, haven't read enough of this book. I don't have enough spiritual understanding. And it's like, at some point, sometimes I have to snap and realize, wait, God does the healing. The work is done. Like, if God is infinite and all love and all present, it's not like he's just waiting and be like, okay, I'm going to wait till that guy gets it. And then you can have some love. It's like, no, like infinite love is a loving parent. Like the healing work has to be done. That's just the nature of the Almighty. And so it's, my task not to get caught up in myself and just, wonder if I'm worthy enough, or if I've studied enough, and just to realize that I just need to awaken to what already is. And then Joy, also circling back to you, I can relate to that because I had two brothers that also, grew up with me in Sunday school, and around high school time, they kind of went their own ways, with different denominations. And I asked myself similar questions as well. And I think it comes down to some of the ideas that have already been shared about how we have to prove it, and that reinforces, the healing that comes from it reinforces the faith. And I think for them, they may not have had the chance to really prove it, because we, definitely sometimes it holds our feet to the fire. I mean, with a lot of challenges, there can be some really, hard lessons, uncomfortable, painful things that, that come to our experience. And, sometimes it's not the easiest thing to have faith or trust that the healing is working out, when it's hard to see that, when you're in a place of pain, when you're in a place of discouragement, or, even depression or whatever. It can be challenging to keep that that trust. But I think that's the difference, is when you because it shows up a lot in the Bible stories too. And when you do, double down on it, that's when it seems like the healings happen, and that just reinforces the trust, at least for me.
What Patty was saying sparked for me. She's talking about the possibility of negative faith. And it reminds me, Mrs. Eddy talks about what she say, when we come to have more faith in the truth of being than we have in error, more faith in spirit than in matter, more faith in living than in dying, more faith in God than in man, then no material suppositions can prevent us from healing the sick and destroying error. But there is that possibility of misplaced faith. And that got me thinking about her scientific translation of mortal mind. She's got 3 degrees of belief. The first one is muddy, terrible, bad, including fear, which is, I think, kind of the opposite of faith. The second degree is still material based, but it includes wisdom, it includes honesty, compassion, hope, and faith, which we've been talking about. And then the third degree is purely spiritual, includes wisdom and spiritual understanding. So to me, that points out, right, the need to always be alert to what messages we are entertaining, to stand porter at the door of our thought, to make sure that our faith is indeed in God, in the infinite, and not that we're not thinking, oh, time, will heal this problem, or distance will heal this problem, or whatever else. And I love that sense. I do think that evidence, there's a reason Jesus went around healing people in order to prove the science that he was demonstrating and teaching, because that showed its ability, that showed its power in a way that people could simply understand. And then they could, they could work on replicating that themselves, which most of us are still working on. But having when I'm faced with something hard, the knowledge that I have a lifetime of healings of things small and large is such a boost to my confidence, my human confidence, that I can translate into a confidence in God. And shoot, if my own experience isn't enough, the Sentinel, 100+ years of Sentinel healings and everybody else's written healings, so inspiring. And often that's what it takes for me to get back on the track of, oh, right, God's got this. God has done this before, and my current situation is no big deal. It's God's got this too. So keeping my faith pointed in the right direction and leaning toward understanding. That's the my takeaway from thinking about the connection between those.
I think you, Joel, were saying something about perfect love or divine love, and misplaced faith, as Scott was just saying. And I had initially referenced to, but I want to go into fear for a second, because fear doesn't mean that you lack faith. Fear is putting faith in the wrong things and in the what if, kind of thing. And so you're gripped with that. But that confidence and assurance and belief in God, the courage to put that belief there, for what God is and what God can be, perfect love casts out all fear, because there is no fear in love, right? And so when we place our faith in that perfect love, divine understanding and evidence begins to reveal itself to us and manifest, if you will. And I think that's 1 John 4:18, I think.
Yeah, I love the idea of courage, because it does take not a human sense of courage, but just that courageous trust, that we are taken care of, that we are the sons and daughters of God, that we are the beloved, the worthy, the crown jewels. Like, we're loved.
Yeah, Peter had a lot of courage to step out on that water until he lost faith in his understanding and became fearful. And he had to be rescued by the Lord.
Well, it's often the case too. I mean, I know in my own life that sometimes, I'll have, as a good metaphor for walking out on the water, and then they said, he saw the winds and the waves, and he was like, oh, what am I doing out here in the water? He lost sight of, keeping his eyes on the prize, so to speak. And yeah, sometimes it's easy to like have a physical challenge that, seems to be like you had it and then it's persisting, or, there's something else that you're dealing with. And maybe it's like him out there seeing the wind picking up, and it's all the more, time to double down and even strengthen our understanding. And that's something I'll touch in at the end too. But yeah, how we can do that, and even progress in our understanding to strengthen our faith and our courage.
Yeah, I think we can often get too tied up with the human picture rather than really starting and finishing with God. I think the more we can grasp the absolute, God's perfection, God's goodness, God's harmony, God's peace, more clearly we can see that we have nothing to do with the human picture. I mean, if we start with the absolute and stay there, we know that God knows nothing about a human experience, because the human experience takes place in the flesh, and God knows nothing about flesh. His ideas are purely spiritual. So definitely understanding strengthens our faith. The more we understand and prove what we understand, the less real the material human picture becomes, so that we can rise above it and be convinced that it cannot touch us as a spiritual idea. I mean, when I look back on my life and I think how often I've got upset about human circumstances, it had absolutely nothing to do with God's creation. It's really dumb to get upset about something that's absolutely not true. I mean, it's like hanging on to a bad dream and believing that it's real when we know we just need to wake up and the dream's gone.
I have one other thing I'd like to read, which is kind of the direction this is all going. This is from James. My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and in entire, wanting nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God that giveth to all liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given them. But let them ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. And from Ephesians. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. And again from Science and Health. We should remember that life is God and that God is omnipotent. Not understanding Christian Science, the sick usually have little faith in it until they feel its beneficial influence. This shows that faith is not the healer in such cases. The sick unconsciously argue for suffering instead of against it. They admit its reality, whereas they should deny it. They should plead in opposition to the testimony of the deceitful senses and maintain man's immortality and eternal likeness to God. Like the great exemplar, the healer should speak to disease as one having authority over it, leaving soul to master the false evidences of the corporeal senses, and to assert its claims over mortality and disease. The same principle cures both sin and sickness. When divine science overcomes faith in a carnal mind, and faith in God destroys all faith in sin and in material methods of healing, then sin, disease, and death will disappear. Faith is higher and more spiritual than belief. It is a chrysalis state of human thought, in which spiritual evidence, contradicting the testimony of material sense, begins to appear, and truth, the ever-present, is becoming understood. Human thoughts have their degrees of comparison. Some thoughts are better than others. A belief in truth is better than a belief in error. But no mortal testimony is founded on the divine rock. Mortal testimony can be shaken. Until belief becomes faith, and faith becomes spiritual understanding, human thought has little relation to the actual or divine. A mortal belief fulfills its own conditions. Sickness, sin, and death are the vague realities of human conclusions. Life, truth, and love are the realities of divine science. They dawn in faith and glow full-orbed in spiritual understanding. As a cloud hides the sun it cannot extinguish, so false belief silences for a while the voice of immutable harmony. But false belief cannot destroy science when armed with faith, hope, and fruition. So another question I'd like to ask, and we touched on this a little bit, but what does faith look like when healing doesn't seem to be immediate?
looks like, it's different for everyone, obviously, but it's like the more we practice and pray and watch our thought and stand porter, and the more, like Christy mentioned, the evidences we see and read about, and the periodicals with all the thousands and thousands of testimonies, and Wednesday evening meetings, and Jesus and Job, in the Bible, and understanding that healing does happen. Well, understanding that the healing has already taken place. We just have to manifest it or understand it, that we are healed, we are saved, we are perfect. But it just it depends on sort of how much experience you have, under your belt. If it doesn't seem to be happening right away, if a healing is taking a little bit, it really just depends on your experience, knowing it will happen. I've seen it happen. It's happening right now. It's just, there's really no time in healing. So just knowing that it is happening, and that's that faith, right? So there's no time sense that it goes, oh, well, it's not happening yet, but maybe tomorrow, or, well, this thing takes 5 days to, or whatever. It's like we take that human sense of time off the table, and really healing doesn't seem to be immediate. That's the question. I mean, what is really immediate in infinity? So I guess it just, to me, it seems like the more experience you have, you kind of understand that there's no time in healing, and that the healing is happening.
It's perhaps even more important to know that there is nothing to heal, really. I mean, anything that God does not know is not real. And God's idea never needs healing because it's perfect. It's a remnant of belief in matter which needs healing. You see that if you realize that, well, for instance, I had a healing not recently, I had a healing a number of years ago where it was dark and everybody had gone to bed, and I was heading for the bedroom, and I thought, I didn't need to put a light on. And instead of going into the bedroom door, I took a step into nothing where the stairwell was, and I did a triple somersault down the staircase to the bottom, landed in a heap. And the first thing, we had a visitor staying with us, and when I called for help, the voice firmly said, "It never happened." And that was really the start of the healing. I was able to get up on my own without any help. I did have some physical symptoms, but they were cleared up within 2 or 3 days. And when something like that happens, you realize, or when you experience something like that, you realize that it really didn't ever happen because God never knew about it. And God knows all his thoughts and everything that's going on, and he's in complete control. So nothing untoward can ever happen. Whether it appears to be an accident or a sickness of some kind. And the firmer we are in our trust that we can understand God, as life and perfection, we realize that we can't experience anything else. It can't touch us. I think it's really important to understand that in reality, there is nothing to heal.
And that's the understanding that brings the healing.
You talk about believing in the waiting. And I was looking up this verse because I couldn't remember the address of it, but it's Isaiah 40:31. And it reads, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint." All of these things are action words in which we are walking out our belief, and our strength is being renewed in the focus, as Joy was saying, on the divine perfection of spirit, right? And the challenges that we will face in this life, I think, will be overwhelming to even the strongest of individuals. But we must rely not on our inner power and our personal strength. Otherwise, if we're putting our faith in ourselves, that will be insufficient, because in reality, that doesn't, there is no reality in that, as Joy was saying.
I think when Joy was talking, she reminded me of what my teacher said during my class instruction, just to not be impressed, regardless of what's going on in front of us, physically or mentally or emotionally, to not be impressed with that, but instead to focus and give our attention and our faith on our knowledge of what God is and what God does. It's a really helpful thought to me.
Something that I've been thinking about as we've been chatting is a verse that's in the lesson this week in Science and Health. Simply asking that we may love God will never make us love him, but the longing to be better and holier, expressed in daily watchfulness and in striving to assimilate more of the divine character, will mold and fashion us anew until we awake in his likeness. And that, again, that daily watchfulness, that's what I've been really thinking about this week during reading this lesson. That can bolster our faith. Again, like I said before, practicing every day, praying, watching, working it out, and is all kind of bolstering our faith for the harder times when it seems like it's being tested somehow. God doesn't test us, but sometimes the human circumstances seem harder than other times. But and then it ends until we awake in his likeness. Like Joy was saying, it's like a dream that we just wake up out of. We don't hold on to it. Awake in his likeness is effortless, really. It's not until we beg and plead at his door, or do some sacrifice, or perform some ritual in his likeness. It's just awaking in it. It's about as easy as it can be, waking in his likeness. So anyway, I've been enjoying that passage this week, really thinking about practicing that daily watchfulness and in striving to assimilate more of the divine character until we awaken his likeness. So grateful for that.
Christy, one thing that you mentioned that was really good too was just that not to be impressed. I found it really important to also not be impressed by others being impressed. And sometimes when we're feeling down, it's kind of maybe it feels nice to have a sense of significance or people having concern for you because you have this problem. And I was reading this testimony yesterday about an older gentleman that was he and his kids were sledding down this hill and it was really icy, and he wanted to obviously impress his kids, and so he went fast. He basically went up in the air and landed sideways on his hip on this kind of like ice precipice, and he was able to slowly make his way back up to the top of the hill. But a lot of the adults that were there with the kids were like, oh, that's we saw how you landed. That must really hurt, and that's just part of getting old. And like he was really quick to catch that of like, no, that's I'm fine. That's not to attach and allow an attachment of like age that carries, oh, well, you're a certain age, you have to have this problem, or oh, you have a hereditary thing, you have to have this problem, or whatever the suggestion is. But it's so important, as Scott said, to stand porter at the door of thought and only allow those thoughts in that actually come from God, and not to allow those human opinions to come in unless they, become our own opinions. Yeah, it's really good. And speaking of teachers, I wanted to lastly share an idea from an assignment that my teacher in Christian Science gave to me, which is to keep a journal of your healings. Just simple book, write down when a challenge took place, what spiritual truths inspired you, when you were healed, and what brought about that healing. So my last question based on this assignment is, when challenges arise, how could a simple practice like this of documenting our healings reinforce our confidence and trust that our needs are being met?
I don't always do that, and I have read that that's a really helpful thought. So thank you for bringing that up. But I know that going to Wednesday night meetings, the Christian Science Church, or any kind of spiritual group like this, sparks ideas and memories. And oh, wait, I've had an experience like that, or I've had to pray about something like that. So even if I'm not journaling, the more I involve myself in spiritual events, I don't know, call it what you will, I've realized that the more healings that are in the forefront of my mind, the more I can stand porter at the door of my thoughts and fight it off. Like, no, I've dealt with you before. You're done, that kind of thing. So, but thank you for reminding me about that practice.
Well, and when you see so many evidences that you've written down over the weeks, months, years, it starts to become almost like mathematics. We can trust in it. It's it's not the same every time. Well, you may use different verses and feel different kinds of inspiration, but the base foundation rock of truth never changes. We just may use different hymns and passages that are meeting that particular need, but you just realize 1 + 1 is always 2. And I've done this before, and like Joy said, there's really nothing physical that can do anything to harm us, but the evidence seems to be pain or sickness, and I know that this can be healed. I've seen it before and I've witnessed it, and we just can persevere in knowing that. But it can be like applying a formula or something very demonstrable.
Well, I'm sitting here in my chair and I'm just watching this spectacular sunset. It's so amazing. And really, when you think about it, we never doubt that the sun is gonna come up or go down. And there's nothing we can do to stop the world turning, so we can't see a sunrise or a sunset. And that understanding is such an encouragement when we can have that total understanding of this, of the movement of the earth and the sun. Then surely we can have that same faith and understanding in God and of God. To get to that point, I mean, we experience every day of our lives that the sun goes up and or the earth turns so that we see a sunrise and a sunset. We never ever doubt it. So to have that faith through experience, we can have that same faith and experience in Christian Science, in the healing, without any doubt that it's going to happen.
Psalm 113:3 says, from the rising of the sun to the setting of the sun, the Lord's name is to be praised.
Yeah.
There's faith in that, is there not? And I must also add that, Joy, your face looks radiant in the moment as you're watching the sunset.
The sun's reflecting on it.
Yes, it is. The sun and the sun.
I wish I could show you the pictures I've taken. I just don't know how to do that, but absolutely amazing. It's brilliant red, and it's reflecting in the water, and there's purple and magenta and even tinges of green and turquoise on the horizon. It's just amazing.
Well, and as we
Just
wrap
like
up,
God.
amen. I was going to say, as we wrap up, if there's somebody on this call or somebody watching the replay and they're like, well, that sounds great, like you guys are all having healings. I haven't, had a healing, and I would like to have a healing. There are actually Christian Science practitioners that you can call. They're super affordable, usually like $40 a day or less. And they're there to they dedicate their full-time job to helping people find healing through prayerfully supporting. And often, as we talked about in this call, it's really just, getting human belief out of the way to let the healing happen that's already there. So if you find that, like, I have a challenge, and it might not be, we talked a lot about physical challenges today, but it could be a relationship challenge. Like, you don't feel like you're finding the right relationship, or you're butting heads in a relationship, or it might be a financial challenge where you don't feel like needs are being met, or whatever the challenge is. There are resources, and if you go on, I believe it's christianscience.com, there's a whole directory of people all over the world that can help you. So, again, this group is here. We're here to support you, but there's also even a lot of resources that are out there that if you are trying to find healing. I'm sure anybody that's on this call that's had healings in Christian Science has relied on a Christian Science practitioner. And for me, the joy is, I used to just think, hey, I'm going to call this person, and the goal is to get this problem fixed. And what I learned was, my goal is to learn something new about how God sees me, learn something new about my experience, my creator, creation. And whenever I learn that thing, that's when the healing just happens as a byproduct. So it used to be about fixing the problem. Now it's like, what do I get to learn this time? It's kind of, it just changes it in a way where it's not out of desperation. It's out of like a sincere desire to grow and to progress. And, this life is one constant stage of progress. I don't think it ever ends. So it's actually kind of cool in that way. And I think if we didn't have challenges, it would kind of be a boring experience. So a lot of times I, welcome the challenges and know that whatever we're given, as it says, we'll be able to meet. So thank you for everybody for being on this call. We went a little bit over, but feel free you can find us on Facebook. We're A Healing Light. And if you'd like to see a topic covered that might be helpful to you, feel free to respond to the email that was sent to you if you received an invite, or post it in the group there. We always love to talk about whatever would be relevant and helpful. Feel free to share anything, and thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a wonderful week.
You too.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.
Right. Thank you.
Mhm.